the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Welcome to The Perspective.
He was in the beginning with God.
You're watching The Perspective with Mike Sherbino.
Hey friends, my name is Mike Gordon, and I'm so grateful that you are joining us here today on The Perspective. Now, all week I have been doing my best to host this show for the great Mike Sherbino, but today we have something very special. Mike Sherbino is in studio. Mike Sherbino is here. But rather than Mike being the one who does the interview, we are going to interview him. That's pretty incredible because Mike is on the front line in this country, really in this world, doing such an incredible thing. He does ministry. He helps leaders. He runs the church. He obviously operates and leads this TV show. He's doing such incredible things, but he's also a human. So we are going to look into his heart and have you get to know the man in front of this camera that you see almost every single week. And I'll tell you right now, it is going to be special. So stay tuned because we will be right back with Mike. Mr. Mike Sherbino, thank you for being a part of your show. I appreciate you letting me host.
Yeah, you're in the captain's chair, Mike.
It's weird. I appreciate you trusting me in the chair and not canceling me yet. But seriously, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And I'm so grateful for what you are doing. Now, for you, some people know you as Mike, the TV host.
Yeah.
But you are not just Mike, the TV host. You have been doing ministry for a very long time.
Yeah, well, let's not say how long it is because I'm trying to cover that up.
For a small amount of time, you have been doing ministry.
Yeah.
But for our viewers who don't know that side
Decades.
of Mike,
Yeah.
share a little bit about your ministry journey because you've done some really incredible things.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Mike. So a long time ago, I was leading worship at a summer camp. And this preacher who I thought was really old, he's probably younger than me now, he said, pray for this guy. And he pointed at me, and of course, I just went red in the face. And he said, I believe God's going to give him a ministry across Canada. And that kind of freaked me out, but I never forgot that. And so as we started into ministry, my wife and I, when we were 22 in full-time ministry, pastoring a church, those dear old people, they never recovered, 22-year-old, God just opened up doors for us to go across the country. So we were in the Greater Toronto area for years. I did some studies in Toronto and then down in Boston in between. But then I went to the Maritimes and pastored and planted churches. And I had a sense in my spirit when I went to the Maritimes, God was going to take me to the far, the West Coast, the left coast. And sure enough, that happened. And in between, I worked in the prairies, did ministry, all sorts of stuff. And that really shaped me, gave me a passion for Canada, but also for the United States, the different things that happened. And in various ways, then God opened up doors for me to travel to many, many other countries and share the message of his love. That changed my life.
Wow. And all because you had this moment, not all because, but you had a moment where this one preacher looked at you, spoke into your life, but you also took those steps.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you had no idea where those steps would lead to, but all over Canada and a ministry in America. Now, respectfully, well, that was a couple years ago. Why do you still do what you do? Because most people who have a track record and a long journey of ministry, at some point they say, okay, I've done enough. Why do you keep going, keep doing what you do?
Okay. Well, that's a fair question. And what started me off in ministry, a millennium ago, just after the Ice Age, was the fact that I said yes to Jesus. And the amazing thing was my wife, and we weren't even dating at that time, she said yes as well. Today here in the studio, I've been listening in as you have been doing a whole week of programming for me. But what you didn't know, I was preparing a message that basically is, what does it mean to follow Jesus? And I don't believe for a moment you get to a certain age and you're supposed to quit. It means saying yes. But when I came back to Ontario and also wanted to launch the Perspective along with a local church that we planted, one of the things God put on my heart was to raise up a platform for younger leaders. And I hate to admit it, but you're younger than me. And I'm better looking, but you're younger. Okay.
I'm glad you admit I'm still
I
young.
wore
No,
the
I'll
black
take that.
shirt just to work with you, Mike. I just thought it would help. Okay. And, but I want to create a platform because God is raising up many, many voices. And I thought if I can help them do that, and if we can profile life-changing ministries that are happening all across North America and around the world, how cool would that be? How cool. And I said, God, if you'll let me do that, I'll try to do my best.
I love that. And one gift I've seen with you is having the ability to see who those young leaders are, which one to invest in. So obviously you can do a ministry that is trying to build up leaders in general, but you have this unique insight. For example, I think of one staff member here at the church that you pastor, Kendon. Like, he's a superstar, 20 years old. He was on the show yesterday. Like, you were one of those people who saw a young leader. So where does that insight come from? So it's not just leaders, but saying this is the one I want to invest in, or this person has something special or a unique calling on their life.
It's probably something that happened to me when I was younger. I had two guys. One was like my pastor. His name was Jim Booker. And he was an itinerant preacher, a little bit like you. And he just poured into me and gave me opportunities to speak. Like, I was 15 and 16, started to speak and share my story. And then there was another guy, his name was Claude Loney. And without telling me, he took me into his family. He was an accountant that went into ministry full time, and he planted churches. And I watched what he did because I would eat at their house every Sunday. And he and his wife, Marion, they just modeled to me how to start churches. So when I found myself starting churches, I had not taken a course. All I knew was what Claude and Marion had taught me. And the truth from Scripture was what a man named Jim Booker had poured into me. And I thought, you know what? God had been preparing me. I was pretty rough, really rough. And maybe I still am. But, in those days, it was just, okay, I'm going to take a step of faith.
And I think I love that. And you're not rough anymore. No, you do learn along the way, but I love how you talk about that, because I think sometimes we're taught in church culture, if you want to be a pastor or if you want to start a church, you want to be a speaker, you have to follow step A, B, and C. And it doesn't always necessarily look that way. Now, obviously, you got your education and learn along the way, but for you, it started with having people invest into you.
Yeah.
How can you encourage in the next minute and a half, encourage maybe older leaders like us? Let's put ourselves in the same boat.
Okay.
How can we encourage these young leaders that are rising up but not really knowing where to go or how to navigate this whole ministry journey or the calling God has on their life?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think one of the things is, first of all, be aware of who's around you. And secondly, start to pray for those people. And then 3, hang out with them. And you might not feel like you're as cool as them. That's probably a reality. Not about you, but at least about me. But at least, you know what? I think I'm cool. And
I'm the same.
And they play along with me, okay? They cut me some slack.
Same here.
And I want to remind them what I have learned, that God is able to use them if they'll say yes. That is so important, saying yes. And to encourage them to take steps of faith and to do what God has been putting on their heart to do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad someone did that in your life. I'm so glad you are doing that in other people's lives, including myself, giving me this opportunity to help with the show, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a mess as well. So thank you for that. And we are also thankful for you being here with us today. Now, we are not done this conversation. We will be right back in a few minutes after this break with Mike Sherbino.
Hey, welcome to The Perspective. Mike Sherbino here. We're glad you're with us.
It's all right here. Watch when you want, where you want.
Well, welcome to The Perspective. I'm Lori.
Real stories, honest questions,
Strong.
a fresh perspective right where you are.
Today, take time to relish in
The Perspective. Follow, like, share. You're part of the mission.
Welcome back to The Perspective with our guest and really the host of the show, Mike Sherbino. Again, thank you so much for being a part of your show as we continue the conversation.
Yeah,
Now, this is a TV show.
it is.
How do you go from pastoring and starting churches and doing ministry coast to coast to having this idea to start a national TV show?
Well, Mike, as we said just before the break, we all have opportunities to pour into people's lives. And I really feel God's calling me to do that. And I can't do it fast enough. But there was a man who poured into me about church planting, about studying my Bible. But there was a third man, and a name that is known to many people across Canada. His name was David Maines. And he was a Pentecostal pastor. He launched a ministry called 100 Huntley Street, which is now Crossroads Communication. And David poured into my life. And back in the day, they started a live call-in telephone TV program, and people would call in through the night. It was called Nightlight. And they gave me the Friday night party crowd. And it would be from 2 a.m. till 5 a.m. live. And we'd just be, all we could do to stay awake. In between breaks, we would be eating pizza or whatever, but people would be calling in from everywhere. And I loved doing live television. And then one thing led to another. It helped me to say, okay, maybe with God's help, I could do radio or I can do other things. And I still do a radio show out of Buffalo. And a lot of the times it's live call-in. And I just love that when people are calling in and asking tough questions and trying to nail you to the mat, because people have questions. So that's how I learned.
I love that. And you're doing it.
I'm doing
And
it.
I love that. I love how you had someone you looked up to with Mr. Maines. And, and I actually remember that show sincerely, maybe not Friday night, but I remember watching it way late in the morning.
What were you doing up that time?
I wasn't a church kid at that point, okay? But then I found Jesus, maybe through that show. I don't remember that part. But it's so amazing to see the journey that you've been on and just doing media, doing TV, and also the radio show in Buffalo. You mentioned you have a lot of people calling in, and I'm sure it's no different than doing ministry. You have a lot of people calling into your life, sharing about what they're going through, but through that, it might give you a taste of the culture that we are surrounded by here in 2026. Well, what perspective do you have on today's culture, maybe how it's impacting people and also just Christians? Yeah.
Yeah. So as we talk about culture, I think one of the things that helps me do media is my ministry as a pastor. And we have a pretty relaxed, informal church, but people come, a lot of them come who have not been exposed to evangelical Christianity. They're wondering, they're looking. Some have had a taste of religion, but oftentimes in the course of the week or on the phone, I am hearing, some incredible stories of pain. Now, if we read the newspaper, we see this, or we listen to the news, we know that there's all sorts of evil out there. And I think God has given the church an incredible opportunity, and we as individuals, to be a bright light. And when these people come, it's overwhelming, it's sad what they're sharing, but they're just normal people. They dress up really good and they look really nice. And yet they're filled with pain, just like many of the viewers today are. And they're saying, I'm trying to hold it together. Things like, what's my purpose? Why am I going through this? How am I going to survive? And does anyone give a rip about who I am and what I'm dealing with? And we have an answer, Mike.
Wow.
Yeah. And you do the same thing. You're talking to a lot of the under 40 crowd constantly. Are they asking any different questions?
Well, it seems like a lot of questions are the exact same thing. And you realize some of the questions that they're sharing is rooted through what they're going through. And there seems to be a lot of suffering, like you mentioned, and pain. And it seems like maybe I've seen young people be taught by the culture, if you do A and B, it should equal C. In other words, you go this direction, you go to school, you date properly, whatever it is, and it should turn into a career. You should be healthy. You'll have a nice long marriage and family. And then life doesn't always follow that script
It doesn't follow that script.
at all. And then what I'm seeing is people now all of a sudden having all these questions. And it's not just rhetorical questions, but I think it really is connected to looking for purpose, looking for the why. And like you mentioned, just looking for some reason. Now, you mentioned the church being a light in that world because there are a lot of people who are hurting and suffering. What are practical ways as Christians or the church can be a light in someone's life practically who might be suffering or going through the hardships that this culture and this world is throwing at them?
You know what? I think there's one word. Ready? Presence. You got to have presence. You got to talk to people. You got to listen to their story and to ask a couple leading but safe questions. And it probably starts with, hey, how are you doing? Whether it's the waiter or waitress at the restaurant. I love my friend Danny Mackay, who comes on the program quite often, and he often says, you know, when he's at the restaurant, and I've used this line, hey, to the waitress or waiter, we're going to pray and say thanks for the food. Is there anything we can pray about for you? And I'm always amazed at what people share. Presence is so important. And it's one thing to invite people, but people will come to church. People will come and listen if you're a friend to them.
I agree with that. And I think sometimes they feel like when you're going through hard times that you might not be welcome into the church.
Yeah.
But you're funny teaching them like, I did something wrong, or I need to have my life all put together in order to walk through that door. But we realize the God that we know, the God that we serve, the God that sent his son Jesus to this earth, he is with us in the midst of those troubles, in those pains, which is what we're going to talk about in our actual devotion today, the peace that he brings to us in the midst of these hard times. What does the good news look like to someone who is maybe in the middle of this culture that feels broken and they're hurting? How does the good news speak to them in the next maybe minute or so that we have together?
I think there are a couple of key things. And I've discovered people are searching for peace. It doesn't matter what country or what culture. But here is what I tell people, and it's simply this. I ask them how they're doing. And I share with them that in my own journey, no one ever had to tell me that I had sinned, that I had messed up. I know that's not politically correct to say you're a sinner, but there was guilt and there was shame. And I tell them how that Jesus is the one person who died on the cross to forgive me, to pay the price, but I got to trust him and that what he is saying is for sure. It's a step of faith. And when you ask him to change your life and to be the leader and Lord of your life, there is forgiveness. I just got off the phone a little while ago with a person and said, I want to remind you that you have told the Lord you're sorry. I want to remind you that he has forgiven you, and today is a new beginning. And his truckload of stuff and shame and guilt, it would have been substance for several movies. Not the stuff we want to hear and share, but we all kind of fixate on it because if I can find someone worse than me, I'll feel better. Jesus died to deal with my sin problem and to give me a new start.
I love that. And that new start is for everyone.
For everyone.
In this post-Christian culture, in this post-modern culture, however they label it here today, Jesus, it loves every single one of them. And no matter how messy your life is, as we both know, can we both experience this in our life?
Yeah.
Jesus is with you through it all. And that's the good news when we understand the power of the cross. Mike, thank you for this conversation. Thanks for being on your show as a guest. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for hosting this week. It's been fantastic.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for being a part of the show. And we will tune in a moment for another teaching, which looks at having peace in those hard moments of life. Stay tuned.
God is moving all around the planet. And in the last 25 years, there's been a massive shift in global missions. Get this, in 1999, there was 1 to 3 known church plant movements. Now, church plant movement is when churches are planting churches and God is moving and exploding in a geographical region in massive ways. In 1999, there was about 1 to 3. In 2001, there was 19. In 2006, there was over 119 to 120. But as we turn the corner into 2020, there were 654 known tracked church plant movements. So God is moving in unprecedented ways in our day, and leaders around the world are mobilizing to get to the rest of the world. And so the Great Commission could be fulfilled in our lifetime.
So today's teaching, which you can find in our monthly devotional, which you can get online, today's teaching comes from John 14, verse 23 to 27. Now let me try reading this for you. All of this I have spoken while still with you. This is Jesus speaking. But the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. And then here's what Jesus says. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. Jesus is giving us this peace that we can experience through the Holy Spirit. A bunch of years ago, I moved from Toronto to London, Ontario, to pursue this new ministry opportunity with a youth Christian organization. Now, when I arrived, they said, hey, Mike, in a few months, in the summer, you have to block off this one particular week. Because that week we are driving 5 or 6 hours up north and we are going camping. Now, I'm a city boy. We don't do camping. For me, camping was renting a cottage, maybe looking outside the window, and if the weather was very nice, maybe going for a walk outside. Like, honestly, pretty pathetic. That's my version of camping. But for them, their camping was pretending you don't own a home for the entire week. Like you were in a sleeping bag and a little tent, and this was just completely brand new to me. But I decided to sign up. And I remember when we arrived, we had to jump into canoes and maybe travel an hour, give or take, to our campsite. Now, this day that we traveled, the sun was shining. It was beautiful. The lake was like smooth like glass. And even for someone like me who has not canoed before, it was so easy. And every little stroke in the water felt like your canoe was a speedboat. But honestly, more than that, it was so peaceful. But then things changed a little bit. You see, by the end of the week, they asked me to do one thing. I've done nothing at this point, by the way, but they asked me to do one thing: try to build the tent on the final night. And I did a really, really bad job. I did not know that at the time until that night, a legitimate storm came and our tent started flooding. Like maybe an inch of water, like it was flooding. I've never experienced a storm so powerful in my whole entire life. In fact, I was so convinced if I looked outside of the tent, I'll see like animals marching towards Noah's Ark. Like that's how big this rainstorm was. But then the final day, as the storm continued and the rain kept coming down, we had to jump back into that canoe and paddle all the way back to where we started. But this time with the waves and the wind and the rain coming down, it was much, much harder. I was afraid the canoe would tip. I was afraid of something going wrong. And as I was kind of panicking and lacking peace, the person in the canoe with me, who was a very experienced canoer, she turned to me and reminded me, it is okay, Mike, you are not alone. I am with you. And I say that because we see this idea of the peace that Jesus leaves with us, the peace that he gives us. This is a peace that goes beyond all understanding. It's a peace not saying that life will be trouble-free, but it's the kind of peace that we have when we go through trouble, the peace knowing that God is with us every step of the way. And maybe for you, you are going through hard times in life. Maybe you're going through marriage challenges or financial issues, or maybe you're going through health scares. Well, I want you to know, even in the midst of your storm, this peace that we can have can actually settle your mind, settle your soul, settle your heart. This peace can actually comfort you, which we experience through the Holy Spirit who is with you in the midst of what you're dealing with. And I know this to be true because along the way in my ministry journey, I have met people who have gone through divorces, yet still had peace in the midst of those storms. I have met people who have lost their job and filing for bankruptcy, yet they've still found peace in their circumstance. And I have met people who have cancer and going through chemotherapy, yet they still had a peace that surpassed all understanding. And that is the type of peace that Jesus leaves with us. We are not alone in these storms. It's like he's with us in the canoe, and it is okay. Whatever the end results look like, it is okay because he is with you every single step of the way, in the good times in life, but also in the hard times and in those storms.
Hi, I'm Ryan Walter. I played a bit in the National Hockey League, 17 seasons as a player and coach. But I love this idea of servanthood. In John chapter 2, there's a beautiful little verse. Jesus does this miracle, turns water into wine. And there's this verse in John 2 that says, only the servants knew. Think about that thought. All the important guests that were there, they had no idea that that miracle had happened. All the important priests and everybody that were there, they had no idea that that miracle had happened. Only the servants knew. There's something special when we get to serve with Jesus, isn't there?
We are so grateful that you joined us today on the show. And Mike Sherbino, he talked about this culture that we are in and addressing that people are hurting. This culture is broken, and you might resonate with that more than you like to admit. Or maybe you are admitting it and you realize in this moment you need peace. A peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that Jesus leaves with us, which we talk about in the teaching today. And if that is you, I want to remind you, we have a 24/7 prayer line that you can call at any point, not only asking for prayer, but maybe you want to make a decision to accept that good news and give your life to Jesus. We have people who want to pray with you through all of that. And like I say over and over, we are so grateful for you being here today. We're thankful that you were a part of the show, and I can't wait to see you soon.